Hello and welcome to my shop. This week on the bench I've got something a little different than what you normally see on YouTube. I've got a couple of shutters to restore. These are 100 years old. It's a project I've been working on for a while. Just finally found the time to get back to it. So let me bring you in close and show you why these shutters need restoration. These were actually repainted and supposedly restored about 10 years ago. Part of the problem is all the trim, it all can just be pulled off with your hand. And the reason why is he primed the shutters, then he nailed these on with pin nails, which is a headless nail, with no glue. So there was nothing to hold these things on. And if you look here, this mounting hardware, this trim piece here should have been cut out to accommodate this so it'd sit flat, and it doesn't sit flat up. And I don't know if the camera's picking up, but there's a lot of alligatoring, I call it, in the paint here. There is lead-based paint underneath here, and I will be stripping these down to bare wood. See how easy this just pull off? You shouldn't be able to do that. You can see that the hardware was just completely ripped out, but I got some wood rot in here. I really won't be able to tell how bad it is until I get all the paint off. And again, these holes don't quite line up because of this, and they had it sitting up on top of there, which was not going to allow it to hang square either. All right, I'm at 67 7/8 on that side, 67 1/4, so I'm out almost 5/8 of an inch. All right, I know from my experience from doing the other shutters that what holds these together, or there are two nails in these mortise and tenon joints that are holding it together. So what they did was they nailed them in and then they cut the nails off flush. So I've got to find them. I just can't remember if they put them in from this side where the hinges are or the other side. So I'm going to get my Rotex sander out, strip this paint away right here, and see if I can find the nails. All right, I'm not seeing the nails, so they must be on the other side. All right, so I've got one nail here and one nail here. They're hard to see, but I've done enough of these that I know what to look for. Because when I nail these, I'm going to nail these nails through. And if I don't have something underneath, it splits the wood on the back side. And these probably will not all come out real clean. Some of these nails are going to be really rusty. So I try and pick a punch that's going to capture the nail. And I'll know if I got it when I pick this up. This block comes up with it. So there we go. So there are my two nails captured in there. And I got both these in this one too, so that's good. Now I just pull those out. So that's all that was holding the shutters together. I only got one here, so this one did not come through. So typically what I'll do is just drill that out. Well, that one I had to kind of make a mess of it. So they come out pretty easy. Came out really clean. Okay, I'm ready to start getting the paint off of the shutters. And before I start, I just want to take a minute and talk about my stripping method. So I have done enough of these that I know the most efficient way to do this, and it's not with paint strippers. It's not with heating it with a heat gun and scraping. I've tried all that. And really the only thing that works for me is getting this off with my Festool Rotex sander. And this is a 40 grit. And I'll start with this and then I'll work up to 80. But I've done this enough that I can usually get through the paint without damaging the wood. There should be lead-based paint underneath this, and you'll see when I bring it in closer. It's going to go through 3 colors, this dark green, probably a primer coat, and all that was put on by the previous restorer. And then there's going to be a lighter green, which is some of the original paint, which is lead-based. So I take every precaution I can. This is not a how-to video. I don't suggest anyone try this at home. It's the way that I do it. And I will wear a respirator and I will wear gloves. I've got my sander hooked up to a HEPA vac, and I'll have my air filtration system above me on. And I will stop after I do 5 or 6 of these, and then I vacuum up the area to keep the dust to a minimum. When I'm done with everything, I wipe my tools down just to get the dust off. So far, I've been able to stay safe doing it this way, so that's how I'm going to do it. All right, here's a little update on the stripping process. For whatever reason, this shutter is scraping better than all the ones I've done in the past. So I am able to remove the bulk of the paint with this carbide tip scraper. It's not really saving any time, but what it's doing is it's saving my sandpaper. I'm not trying to get it all off. What I'm trying to do is get through these couple thick layers of latex paint that goos up the sandpaper. And then I'll show you real quick how clean this comes. This piece of sandpaper is pretty worn out, but you'll see how quickly it can take this little bit that's left on here off. I've come up with a little bit different clamping plan. As you saw, it's a pain using that screw clamp. I love this workbench. I got some bench dogs in here. First thing I'm going to do is super glue this 2x4 to my workbench, but I've got some tape on here so that hopefully it won't stick. Should be good enough. Just want to keep it in place. Now, I got my bench dogs set to where they'll catch the end of this, so I can just set them in here. I can bring this over to the edge so I can sand the edge. Now I can just scrape and sand. All right, I got all the slats or louvers sanded with the 40 grit. Only went through 5 pieces of paper, which isn't too bad. Did a really good job. So these get sanded one more time, but only to 120 grit. So now just time to move on to the rails and the stiles and get those cleaned up. I think somebody put caulk in here, but the wood is not rotten. It feels pretty solid. I could fill this with putty or Bondo, but that wouldn't really be a good way to do it. It's square. Now this one goes through where the through the mortise here, but that's okay. I think I can flush cut it off from inside. Right, this is actually a louver or slat from a shutter I previously restored that I didn't use this because it was damaged. So I'm just going to cut this up to fit in there. I'm just going to get everything sanded to 120. I'm using my ETS 150 Festool sander. This is such a smooth sander and it's perfect for an operation like this. Focus on this. But there's a beaded edge here and it's just full of paint, and rather than trying to clean this out, what I do, I've got a router bit that I just take and run a new beaded edge on here and it cleans it up pretty good. Okay, it came out pretty good. I don't know if the camera is picking that up where you can see that profile. I got a little bit of sanding yet to do, but yeah, for what it is, it came out pretty good. Okay, got all my pieces cleaned up. Everything's sanded to 120 and ready for reassembly. It was a marathon sanding session over a couple days, but got it done. So I'm going to get shutter number 1, which are these pieces and these pieces. I'll get it put together. I won't show you the process on both of them. $67.5. Daggone, it's dead on. I have to kind of custom fit these now because I've pulled this in tight with all the sand in it and everything else. They're just really tight, so I'll take it over to the miter saw and just trim about half the width of the blade off and custom fit each one of these. Now to secure the louvers in place, I just use a little 3/4 inch brad nail and just pin it in the corner. And when I flip it over, I'll pin that side too. I don't use any glue here. All right, the final thing I'm going to do before painting is I'm going to make some new trim molding to go around the outside here. So I'm going to use this Douglas fir. So the way I do these is I'll run this side across, I'll flip it over, run the other side across, do my operations on the table saw, then trim those two pieces of molding off, and repeat that until this wood just gets down to a point where it's not safe to hold. All right, the next operation is to trim some of this off because this flat area is not wide enough for what I want. All right, these are all the trim pieces I need for this side. Before I put these on, I'm going to run over this with 120 just to level off all of the louvers so I get a good tight fit with the trim. I'll be using a 5/8 inch long 23 gauge pin nail to hold these in, but different from the last guy, I'll glue these on. Before I move on to priming, I like to go back like where I put these dowels in where there's a little bit of wood missing and just some other areas, and use this glazing compound to fill in those voids. Just to talk about my painting process real quick before I get started, I'll start with a base coat of oil-based primer. I like to use this Fresh Start from Benjamin Moore. I've always had good luck with it. I have it tinted with just a little bit of black so it comes out a gray color. It's just a little bit easier for the dark green to cover. So and now I'm just going to give it a very light sand with 220. All right, the final step before paint's going to be to get all of these grooves and cracks and voids caulked. And I like to use this Dynaflex Ultra. It's really good caulk. Good bit put down in here. Then I come back with my finger. Any water that I can keep out of these joints is going to help this shutter last a long time. So I'll put at least 2 coats on. It's pretty thin paint, so a lot of times I'll have to come back with a 3rd coat just in touch-ups. The final step is going to be to make a copper cap for this. I like to put these on. It's a good weather protectant. It keeps water out of these joints up here. and they just look really nice. It kind of gives the shutter a little bit of a upgrade, kind of high-end look. All right, so I've got my copper banding here. This is 2 inches wide. My shutter is 1 inch wide. So I'm gonna have a 1/2 inch overhang on each side. So I'll measure the length of the shutter because I want the same 1/2 inch overhang on the ends as I have on the side. We'll come in a 1/2 inch. Bend these over. Take my lineman's pliers and just fold it in. And take my little screwdriver and try these out. And it just makes a nice little end cap. And then I've got to take this part of the trim off. And by the way, on the brackets, all I did was clean them. These were still in really good shape. All right, the final step is I'm going to polish these copper caps so they'll look good at least for a few days before they start to tarnish, and I'm going to use my Never Dull. Shine them up pretty good. All right, I got these 2 shutters done, and I couldn't be happier with the outcome. These shutters are almost 100 years old, and I think with the cleanup I did, stripping the paint, resetting the joints, squaring them up, replacing the trim, adding the weather caps on them, I think they're going to last another 100 years. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will have more videos coming out, but I'm probably going to be doing them every other week, because I've got a lot more of these to do this summer. I'm not going to bore you with any more shutter videos. Hang tight. I'm going to have some before and after pictures coming up. Thanks again.